Thank you to everyone out there who's been listening. The podcast has been growing faster than I expected, with over 300 downloads from all over the world. The top 5 countries besides the United States are China, Canada, Finland, Australia, and Hong Kong. I see you guys out there. Speaking of Hong Kong, that's the topic of today's episode. Back in March, I went traveling across Asia for 2 months, and I stopped in Hong Kong to meet with a friend of a friend, Natalie Goni, and talk about her experiences living in Hong Kong for the last 5 years. She's originally from England, and I got to hear her perspective on living in an Asian city in a completely different culture, and some of the different ways that they do things, for better or worse. We also talked about her perspective as a Brit on American culture and some of the things that we do well that maybe we hadn't really considered before. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Here is Natalie Goni. I'm here in Hong Kong. I've been here for about 10 days and got introduced to Natalie through a mutual friend of ours, Kelly Mountain. And it's good to have you here.
Thank you, Finch. It's good to be here.
Yes. And so you are from the UK originally.
I am.
And you've been living in Hong Kong for 5 years, is that right?
Yep, just over 5 years.
And so I'm interested to hear your experience of a Westerner living in Hong Kong's such an interesting city. It's, I guess, technically part of China, but it's really kind of its own city-state, and it's a quite unique place. So we could start anywhere, but I guess I'm curious. You told me a little before. What was it that brought you here to be in Hong Kong?
So in my previous life, I worked in the corporate industry. I worked for a big asset manager, and I was working in London. I've been working for them for 7 years, and I was actually meant to go to New York. So there was a job that they were talking to me about in New York, and I was really excited, and that was all kind of going ahead. And then at the last minute, they actually said, we're going to send someone else to New York, but we have this job in Hong Kong, and would you be interested in going to Hong Kong? So Hong Kong was somewhere that I'd traveled lots of Asia before, but I'd never been to Hong Kong and never really thought about coming to Hong Kong or visiting or holidaying or working or anything. So it was a bit of a surprise, but thought, why not? There's no reason not to. So came to Hong Kong.
Did you visit before making the decision? No. Yeah, you just jumped right in.
Rocked up.
Wow.
And yeah, but I kind of figured that it's kind of like any big Asian city.
Where else had you been in Asia before that, like big city wise?
Bangkok, Tokyo, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore. Where else? Hanoi in Vietnam. So quite a few different places. So I figured it would be pretty similar. And it kind of, and it's not.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of, it's a weird place. It's kind of Asian, but not. Yeah, on the surface, you kind of arrive and you're like, oh, this is all pretty simple, and people speak English, and all the familiar brands are here, and you go to HSBC and open up your bank account, and but under the surface, there's just these kind of it is different. It is an Asian city. So yeah,
it's very yeah, it's unlike any place I've ever been before. It's a huge city. It's one of the most densely populated areas on the planet, I think. I think it is actually, like between Shenzhen, China, Macau, and Hong Kong. I think this is the most densely populated part of the world.
Yeah, I think Mongkok is the most densely populated area in the world.
And Mongkok is like a little area of it's a particular
on the Kowloon side
part of Hong Kong.
Have you been?
Yeah, we did walk around there.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Is that where the sneaker street is, Mongkok? Yeah, I'll just tell people, there's this weird area where there's like all these there's like on a single block there's like 3 Adidas stores and a Nike store and a Puma store. It's just all the sneaker brands.
Yeah.
And there's just like giant malls of only a few brands, and everyone's walking around wearing
the same
Adidas
stuff.
apparel.
Yeah.
It's like
it's weird.
It's like a movie set or something of like a commercial.
Yeah. I do find that actually in Hong Kong, like it's something I miss coming from London is the individuality of dress and I don't know, like here people tend to stick to the kind of mainstream way of dressing and the brands, and people don't like to kind of stick out too much. And I miss that actually.
Yeah.
Something I miss definitely from London and Europe.
Yeah,
the
it's
individuality.
Right. It's kind of surprising that people, I don't know, like, because we don't really do that either in the U.S. as much. Like, just wear. I guess people wear brands and stuff like that, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I'm not trying to be a walking Adidas advertisement or anything like that. You know, like it's not that cool. Adidas, I don't care.
Yeah.
Personally. Another really interesting thing about Hong Kong that struck me is because we were just talking about how densely populated it is, but in some ways that's really surprising to me because it doesn't feel crowded like I would expect. I mean, I think there's 7 million people in Hong Kong, and it's not really a big city, like area-wise. And there's huge skyscrapers, like pretty much as far as the eye can see. And I'll just give people a little basic layout of the geography. So there's a big hill called Victoria Hill. And Victoria Peak.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Which has a great view. You can see the whole city, but coming down from the peak, like, and that's on Hong Kong Island, which is its own separate island, and then there's a little strait between Hong Kong Island and what do you call the other side? Kowloon?
Yeah, Kowloon, and then it goes into the New Territories.
Right.
And then into China.
Right. Yeah. And then when you get to China, it's Shenzhen, which is a huge city. I think 20 million people or something crazy like that. And yeah, it's not a very big area, and most of that area is filled with giant skyscrapers that people live in or work in or whatever. But I noticed that being down on the street, even in the very busy areas, there's not that many cars, or there's at least not many cars that I would expect for what I'm used to in most cities. Like most cities, the downtown is complete gridlock all the time. And there's, just people walking everywhere and crossing the street in all different places, and taxi cabs and noise and chaos. But there's actually enough space in the downtown. Like there's cars and buses, but it's not jam-packed. And there's people, but it's not jam-packed. And one of the reasons for that is the whole... Well, you called the city a rabbit warren. Is that what you called it?
Yeah. And
there's all of these different ways to get around, not just ground level, but there's all these footpaths and walkways. And the subway is probably the best subway I've ever seen. It's really cheap. It's fast. There's tons of trains. It's clean.
Yeah.
People are respectful and orderly. It's super efficient. and you can get pretty much anywhere within 30 to 45 minutes or so.
I think that actually sums up Hong Kong. Like, it's efficient, it's fast, people are pretty orderly.
Except for cheap. It's not
Except for cheap, yeah, exactly.
But the subway's cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Public transport is cheap. It's the only thing that's cheap in Hong Kong.
And it's so good between the subway and the buses that, you know, I don't know how many people in a car, not many, but you don't need a car at all. No. And most people don't have them. And so you don't have the streets littered with cars. The cars that are around are kind of people's playthings, like BMW, Mercedes, or Tesla. Or even we saw some Lotuses, a McLaren, Lamborghinis, Ferraris. That's not uncommon too, because excuse me, I think Hong Kong has the most billionaires per capita of anywhere in the world as well. There's an incredible amount of money here.
There's an incredible amount of wealth. Yeah. Hong Kong, I don't know, it's 7 million people on a very small piece of land, and we've just found a way to coexist with each other in a way that kind of works. Like you're always around people pretty much, even when you kind of make the decision to go on a nice country hike, you know, at the weekend. There's like hundreds of other people that have decided to do the same thing, so you never feel alone really. But I think because of the lack of space, there's just been this adaptation of it's not politeness in the way like in England where everyone's over polite and there's pleases and thank yous and sorries every time you bump into someone, and it's different. It's just a consideration that there's always people around you. And so things like noise and dress and it just kind of works. Like Hong Kong people, I don't know if you found this, but it's not known for being the warmest of cultures or cities. But I read an article a while back that talked about the fact that because everyone is so jammed in together, you kind of you don't always spend time speaking to other people on the street because there's just so many people, and you've kind of got to find a way to kind of create your own little zone in this tiny space with so many people. Yeah. So, but when you actually get to know people, like generally people are considerate and nice to each other. But it just kind of works.
But there's something culturally that makes it work, because I don't necessarily feel that in American cities, which are way less densely populated. But there's like a tension in America, like an obvious racial tension, but a cultural clash and tension where, like I was thinking the other day how growing up we always said America was a melting pot, or we were taught that it's a melting pot of cultures, but it's really more like a bento box where everything's pretty separated. Like there's all of these different areas where like, oh, this is like where the Hmong people live, and this is where like the Ethiopians and Africans are. This is where like the Vietnamese and Filipinos are. They're kind of separated into these different areas, and doesn't really mix thoroughly, and it does here. And like there's just kind of like a mutual respect that people have where, and like people line up for buses and stuff like that. They're not just like all in this huge crowd trying to like pile in past each other. You know, there's just an orderliness that people respect, and I don't know how that came to be or how we can get some of that, but it works really well.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of different things though, because it is pretty homogenous. really. Like you haven't got a huge amount of different ethnicities. I mean, you have a big Indian and Pakistani community that were actually, second generation born in Hong Kong. But it's not massive. And then you've got, what people would call expats, but actually we're not expats, we're immigrants. Americans, Australians, Brits, Canadians. But really the numbers are small. So overall it's pretty homogenous in terms of Chinese Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm. But then there's Hong Kong people and there's mainland Chinese people too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but mainly, more Chinese now, but mainly Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting, as I was listening to you talk about the States, and I think you almost sometimes get a trade-off, like in places where you do have that tension of different groups and different ethnicities and therefore different cultures and ways of thinking, and you get a bit more creativity, you get a bit more creative tension. So I think with just the general people tension, you get creative tension. Whereas here, I think that's missing. Mm-hmm. So although it's kind of orderly and it's efficient, and I think that tension that you talked about it can be a good thing and a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our friend Kelly was kind of talking about that too, how Hong Kong people really seek experience they kind of crave external culture in a way, and that kind of new stimulus or new inspiration.
Yeah, because there isn't that here really, and I think it's just because, for many different reasons, I think it's just more homogenous in terms of culture. There just isn't the space, there isn't the variety of people, there isn't the investment in art and things like that, and music. So it's different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you were saying the other day about live music. Yeah. There's little bands and stuff that play at bars, but there isn't a lot of like international scene here, music and art and stuff like that. I saw that Katy Perry is coming to Hong Kong.
Yeah, I know.
But she's the only one because her posters are like all over all the subways.
Yeah.
Like, an American's coming to Hong Kong. It's like a big deal.
And I don't think there was even that previously. Like I've been here for 5.5 years, and there hasn't been that many like big artists that come through Hong Kong. They go to Singapore or Bangkok, but not really Hong Kong. And I think part of that is also, I don't really know why, but what I do know is the big kind of like convention center where they have the big music concerts, the sound is really bad. And so I wonder whether it's a venue thing as well. Mm-hmm. But
and maybe it's like not really their thing culturally. It's not their expertise. They're not quite dialed into that yet.
Yeah.
But I bet though there's Hong Kong to me feels like there's a lot of opportunity here. I mean, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of money, and people crave those kind of experiences. If somebody were to bring in their external expertise, and you'd obviously have to determine whether there's an openness to that or a market for that. But I feel like there's so much growth happening here. Like just at Victoria Peak, I was looking down over the city, and there's this huge skyscrapers still going up everywhere, like under construction, and they're building a giant bridge between Hong Kong and Macau. Yeah, it's
crazy.
And they're building so much, and they have been like for many years. And I think of Hong Kong as like a city of the future. It really is. I'm like, wow, Hong Kong is so much more advanced already today in some ways than many other cities that I've been to.
In what
it
way?
Still is just like, it's still blooming, you know.
How do you say it's advanced?
I feel like there isn't a lot of resistance to doing things a better way or the best way. Like, there's a sort of, it's hard to describe, it's kind of abstract, but I get this sense that there's like this visionary quality of like, where are we in the present and where do we want to move to in the future? You know, like, oh, we have a traffic problem. How are we going to fix that? Oh, we want to open up access between Macau and Hong Kong. Let's build this. How long is that bridge? 60 miles or
ridiculous.
It's so long and
Yeah.
so expensive. And in the US, we're constantly trying to do things to improve our infrastructure and our country. And it just doesn't, they're like, oh, it's too expensive. And like, what are we spending money on? I don't even know. Like, how come other places can just see like, oh, this is what we need, and they make it happen?
But then saying that, it's a different, and I agree to a certain extent. That's why I love living here, because it feels like anything is possible. Like, if something, you know, breaks or you need to get something done, you can get it done within a day.
Yeah.
You don't have to like call someone and then wait a week for them to come round, or, you know, it's literally like, let's make shit happen.
Yeah.
But then saying that, like, that bridge that they're building is, I mean, yeah, God knows how much money they're spending on it. I mean, China's got a lot of money, but there's like quite a lot of people that have died building that bridge. Yeah. Like, it's not on the news a lot. I can't remember where I read it, or I think it might have been on the TV news about a year ago. But a lot of the people, and so I don't know how many, but there are kind of deaths that are, I don't know, being sacrificed for that bridge. Whereas I think somewhere like in the States, that just wouldn't happen. Do you know what I mean?
So like they just, yeah, I think I do. Like there's certain standards that they don't necessarily adhere to, like safety standards or, you know, possibly food standards. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or air quality standards, certainly.
Yeah.
That's one not so nice thing about Hong Kong, is it's very polluted.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's I'm not really sure how to articulate it, but it is very different to somewhere like the States or the UK, who've been, you know, kind of done all their big bridge building and infrastructure. Now it's like, it's kind of like maintenance or trying to find ways to make it better that from when it was built, you know, 100 years ago or whatever. Maybe not so much in the States, but whereas here it is all still quite new, but there's almost a bit of sacrifice that is
They're
going
still
into that as well.
Out the kinks of how to do it all.
Yeah,
I don't know how to do it properly.
Yeah, it's just more. There's less standards. There's more people that need money and work and willing to do whatever they need to do to get that money, that income.
Yeah, I could see that. And there's a lot of one thing I read too about Hong Kong is there's massive wealth disparity.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you have the largest number of billionaires per capita of any city in the world.
Yeah.
But you have people who they're, you know, they could be like immigrants, I think from the Philippines.
Yeah. In
particular is a country that a lot of people come from, but on like a specific worker visa where you many of them are like housekeepers and things like
domestic helpers.
Domestic helpers. Yeah. And it's a specific visa where like you have to live with the person. You live in their home, so you're not taking up more space. But I don't think they really get paid, or I'm not sure really or they do, but it's most of their work arrangement is kind of the ability to be here, I think. Yeah,
they get paid, but it's pretty, you know, there is a minimum wage. I can't remember what it is, might be $10 an hour.
Which is like $1.30 US,
Yeah.
$1.30.
I think it might be that, but I'm not sure. But essentially, because they have to live in, they get their food and like lodging paid for.
Yeah.
But they only have one day. They only have Sundays off a week.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot do live out. And I think they might have just changed the law so they can live out.
Mm.
But yeah, if they do live out, they mostly live in like boarding houses and 6-7 women sharing one apartment, and that's pretty small anyway.
Right. Yeah, and some of the apartments here are like notoriously tiny, like closet space. And you were telling me that when they calculate the square footage, they'll calculate every bit of surface area, like even windowsills and stuff like that. So you'll think it's a certain amount, but when you go in there, that usable space is actually far less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there is a big wealth disparity.
Mm-hmm.
But then saying that, I think there is everywhere, isn't there? In the big cities.
That's probably true. I'm not sure. I think some places are certainly worse than others, but it's so expensive here, the cost of things, it makes it more difficult too. I think that just however much money you earn doesn't go as far. I imagine because so many things are imported. I mean, I don't know really what Hong Kong produces domestically. Certainly a finance-based economy.
Yeah, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. They grow rice on Lantau, I noticed.
Do they?
Yeah.
I don't know where that goes.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
Lantau is the biggest island and the least populated island. Of Hong Kong, yeah, which they're currently developing. But it's kind of a cool place. Like that's where you're saying probably people go hiking is out there. Or there's other spots too, but there's actually quite a bit of nature left and hills, and I mean it's very natural. And there's natural springs out there and wild water buffalo and stuff like that.
Yeah, and little Buddhist temples and I mean we are very lucky living here, and that's why I live in Asia and have no plans or desire to go back to the UK anytime soon. There is just something different about the energy here of being in Asia. It's different. I mean, especially with everything that's going on right now in the States and in Europe. It's sometimes you can be in a bit of a bubble in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a nice bubble.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, I'm considering moving to Asia as well. Yep. I before I left, I thought, because Kelly said such good things about Hong Kong, and I was really interested to come here and check out the possibility of living here. And I think if I have my heart set on Taiwan, I like Hong Kong a lot, but the culture there is even warmer. Yeah. And it's actually warmer too, climate-wise. It's tropical. It's the same
more space
latitude as Hawaii. Yeah, more space.
Yeah. Good tea.
Really good tea. Good amazing
fresh food.
And it's cheap. That's like another thing too. It's surprisingly cheap.
Yeah. And it's only an hour away by flight.
Yeah. So
it's actually really, I think Taiwan is actually really underrated.
Super underrated.
They kind of keep it quite quiet.
Yeah.
Like
I'm letting the secret out.
Yeah. If you're from the UK or the States, or you don't really know anything about Taiwan other than maybe stuff was made there like in the 80s or something.
And
but
it's like
it is
kind of
a
part
little
of China.
gem.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
All right. I'm curious what people know about Taiwan. I grew up in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley, and half of my high school was people of Asian descent, Asian American children born in States, but many of their parents were from Taiwan or China or various places, but mostly China or Taiwan. So I grew up in Asian culture, I think more than most Americans did. But
And when you say Asian, you mean like Chinese, Taiwanese,
Korean, Japanese.
Okay.
Trying to think. That was pretty much it. Some Vietnamese, but not really any Filipinos or Hmong or other Indonesians or anything like that. But kind of more affluent Asian countries. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly Chinese. Yeah, in my school. But I'm curious what Westerners or what Americans do know about Taiwan. I imagine almost nothing. But yeah, what can I say about Taiwan? I met an American from Ohio when I was in Taiwan who was teaching English, and I was really curious about his experience because I'm considering doing the same. And so he said that he had his own place, and so did his buddy who was from South Africa, who he had traveled almost the entire world. He'd been to almost every country in the world, and he was somewhere in his 30s. But he said Taiwan is his favorite country.
Really? It's a big statement.
It's a big statement. And but the American, he was saying it was super easy to get there. They want people, especially people with American accents, or like the Ohio accent or Midwestern accent is very subtle, and California accent is non-existent pretty much. We use certain California words, but he was saying that he had his own place, and it was in a more expensive part even than most other people live.
Is this in Taipei?
This is in New Taipei City, which is like right next to Taipei. Okay. It's kind of weird that there's a Taipei city and a New Taipei City.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But they said that they very easily save half of their income, with just living somewhat simply, but just the way they want to live. Food is cheap, drinks are cheap. They hang out and they work, and but yeah, they were saving half of their money, and I don't know. There's just so many good things about Taiwan.
Yeah, it's a different energy. Like it's a different energy to Hong Kong. So I think it probably depends on what you're into. It's much more
American influenced.
Yeah, here is probably a little bit more British, maybe.
More British.
Or British, Canadian.
But still, both places are very much Asian, like culturally, but just that tinge of Western influence is from different origins. Yeah,
I have been to the Barbie Cafe in Taipei.
Oh,
that's pretty American.
What is that? Like Barbie the doll.
As in the doll. Yeah, it's really weird.
Huh.
And everything has got so much sugar in it. It's crazy.
What do they
like
serve?
Like little macaroons and cakes and in shapes of Barbies, and all the waitresses are in like little Barbie outfits, and it's really weird.
That sounds weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
It sounds like something I'd see in Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah. My friend just went to the Pokemon Cafe in Tokyo, which looked bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some weird stuff in Tokyo.
Super weird.
Yeah.
So I'm curious we were sharing a little bit of your thoughts about America. I want to talk more about that. That's always fun for me.
Yeah.
Just to hear like a foreigner's perspective on our country, or like the things that you think we do well, or the things that are totally crazy that make no sense to you.
Oh my God, where do I start?
Right.
I'm quite fascinated by it, actually. Well, we were just talking earlier about the I was making the observation that Americans kind of grow up with this inbuilt confidence and like kind of, I don't know, is it bravado? Like, I don't know what it is. A
courage or confidence. Yeah.
It's just it's a self-confidence that Brits don't have, because Americans, it seems like, there's just this culture of anything is possible and live your dream, and it's a real kind of like go for it, you can achieve anything kind of, and I don't know if this is true or not, but did you do show and tell at school?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
didn't?
we only know this from American movies.
Oh, okay.
Like show and tell, like you get up and you talk about, I don't know, something you want to show and tell.
Yeah.
And we didn't really do anything like that as in the UK. So like from a very early age, you're kind of trained to speak in front of groups of people, to be really bold about who you are and what your strengths are. And I'm always really fascinated by that. I've always worked with a lot of Americans and worked for an American company for a long time, and I was just always fascinated in how Americans talked to each other and how they talked about like everything was amazing and awesome, and like Brits, we would be like on the other end of the conference call kind of rolling our eyes. I was on a conference call once with my American colleagues. This is HR people, and it was all like probably about 20 people in New York, a few people from California, and then a group of Brits on the phone, all in the same HR team. And I can't remember it might have been Christmas or some kind of annual celebration, and the American team just started singing like gospels, and not gospel, like hymns and some kind of but it was really serious. And like as Brits, we were all on the other end of the phone going, oh my God, what's going on? Did they expect us to sing? But there was no irony in what they were doing. Whereas Brits kind of can't do anything like that without taking the piss.
You would never do that.
We would just never do that. I don't know what that is. But Brits, we're kind of I don't know. We're sort of you're taught not to brag. If you brag about who you are or your achievements, or that's not seen as something that's celebrated.
Yeah.
But it kind of, I don't know, it kind of you can definitely see why Americans are successful in a lot of things, because that is inbuilt in you.
I never thought about that like show and tell as something that would be confidence building. And now I'm just thinking too, in school, the teacher will ask a question, and students raise their hand that like, call on me, I want to say the answer, right? But there's always shy kids that you always have those go-getters that are always raising their hand and always want to answer, to give the right answer. And then the teacher will like make sure to call on anybody, or at least on everybody. Sorry. Yeah. A lot of my teachers did this. And then there's the shy kids that never raise their hand, and the teacher would call on them. I was one of those that I'm like, oh, please don't call. I always knew the answer. I'm like, don't call me. I don't want to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is that kind of there is that kind of encouragement of children, and we would do art projects and we'd do all kinds of stuff to help us get in touch with who we are, maybe. I mean, I think that is a good thing. When I've been through my career and worked with Americans, I definitely see the benefit of that, for sure. One thing I always used to and maybe this is probably really generalizing, but one thing I always used to notice when I was in like a room just with Americans, everyone would be talking, but all talking over each other. And I'd be like, what are they doing? Where do I jump in? And I learned something, and it's hard to articulate it without drawing it, but Americans actually talk, that's the way that you speak. You kind of talk over each other, and there's not a natural, you sense when when it's time for you to speak, and that will generally be before the other person has finished their sentence, but that's normal. Whereas somewhere like Japan, there's a natural pause between
when everyone speaks.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the indication of, oh, it's my turn to speak now, because there is a natural silence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like two opposite ends of the extreme.
Mm-hmm. And I actually like that in Asian culture, that because I feel, I mean, I've felt frustrated at times with everyone talking over each other, because I feel like no one's listening to each other.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking, no one's listening. Or, sometimes by it's important to build up the ego in a way, to like have self-confidence, but it gets out of control sometimes, and you have all these egos trying to get their word in.
Yeah, and I think that what you just said then, I think that's where the challenge comes in. I think Americans are raised to be confident and to show and tell, and to have that inbuilt self-confidence, but what then doesn't happen is the listening, and the reflection, and the self-reflection, and the pause. And I think that's, and we're generalizing here, like totally, but I think that's what is missing, and you can kind of see that in the culture, right? You can kind of see what's happening now in the States, and that inability to listen is, I'm totally generalizing here. Like, I hope you're not taking offense.
No, I'm not offended.
But in a way, that's kind of what's quite nice about Asia. Again, generalizing, but there's more. I think the culture and the basis in a lot of Buddhist religion, and there's a lot of self-reflection time, and focus on silence and listening, and
I think that's one of the reasons that people are not pushing over each other in this city. You know, that there's more of an inherent understanding of space and listening, and people are much more aware of their surroundings as well. You know, or aware of, like, people just very rarely bump into each other, even in Central Station in Hong Kong, which is super busy, super crowded during rush hour, and people are moving all kinds of different directions. You don't
watching videos and playing Candy Crush while they're walking. Yeah, and like dragging bags behind them and stuff. Yeah, people have incredible spatial awareness where you can just see through the crowd and see the gaps to walk, and people are not. There's a kind of way that people walk in busy cities sometimes where they're leaning forward, you know, they're rushing, and they're just trying to get there 10 seconds faster for no reason. It's not like that here.
It's not like that at all.
No. I always found that really weird coming from London, where everyone is, you know, rushing to get somewhere, and I always found it so weird in Hong Kong that people would just be like cruising. Yeah. It's like, haven't they got somewhere to go? But I don't know why that is the case.
You know, I just thought of one thing. I have not worked in the corporate world myself, but I have a buddy who did, and I just asked him one day, I was like, I have a buddy. No. Yeah. Well, I asked him one day, hey, what percentage of the corporate world do you think runs on coffee and caffeine? And he was like, oh, at least 90%.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I wonder how much of an effect that has with everyone in their 9-to-5 jobs, and they're underslept, they're stressed, they are topping up on caffeine in the morning to just try and get themselves going, and there's just that rush. Whereas here, it's more of a tea culture. I mean, I'm sure plenty of people do drink coffee, but I don't really know. But it seems like it would obviously be far less of a coffee culture.
Yeah, I mean, you've got, you know, everyone loves Starbucks here, and you've got the Hong Kong equivalent, which is Pacific Coffee. But yeah, on the whole, generally, I think it's people are less coffee drinkers. I mean, the stress is still here. That like people work long hours. You know, they live in tiny apartments, so the stress is still here. But yeah, it's like slightly less high octane. Yeah, you know, it's kind of like it's different to somewhere like New York, where everyone is like you know, 3 espressos by 11 a.m. kind of thing. And yeah, I don't know. It's a focus on hard work and being, you know, showing face at work, being there, but probably less achievement orientated. Does that make sense? Than somewhere like New York.
Yeah.
It's like I'll work because working hard is a good thing, and I want to earn money, but it's not necessarily because I want to have the corner off. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And there's more focus on the collective.
They're not as ambitious. Well, in a certain kind of way.
Well, I think maybe it comes back to like Asian cultures tend to be more we and the collective, whereas Americans, Australians, Brits to a certain extent tend to be more individualist. Like what can I achieve?
Yeah.
So like when I
even at the cost of stepping over other people.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's part of it, right?
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with this, but part of the kind of unspoken ethos of like American capitalism is that, you know, to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. And there's this kind of idea that there can only be one king of the hill, and everyone's trying to get there. There's kind of a competitive mentality.
And that's seen as a good thing.
And I don't think it's necessary. I don't think that competitive mentality is necessary for success. In fact, I think it's detrimental to the society. I mean, you do get some, you know, rock stars that really rise to the top and are incredible business people that, you know, make things happen. But then you get other people who, there's just a greed element. And maybe that's just a human thing, but I feel like it's encouraged in Western society.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, actually, because in Hong Kong you talk about, you said earlier about how many billionaires there are per capita. They're actually really low key. So you don't, I mean, there's a couple of, there's a guy called Li Ka-shing who's just retired. He's like 90. He's one of the richest men in Hong Kong. And his son has just taken over his empire. He owns a lot of, I don't know too much about him, but he owns a lot of property and he's very, very wealthy. But he's pretty low key. And for all the other billionaires there are here, they're quite low key. So it's almost like you're rich, but you kind of stay humble with it. Whereas I think
so unusual.
In the States, it's like, you know, you've got Trump, you've got people that are very well known.
Their wealth is like part of their personality, part of their character,
and it's seen as a thing to be celebrated.
Right.
Whereas wealth here is celebrated. I mean, everything is orientated around wealth. Like Chinese New Year, all the greetings are about having good fortune and health and wealth, but it's just got a different quality attached to it.
It's more in balance, I think. It's seen as an aspect of, like a necessary aspect to a healthy life, which I think, you know, there's kind of almost like a cultural backlash in the States now against money because of the greed of corporate capitalists and their some of their willingness, or even companies' willingness to, you know, drive for the bottom line, even at the
anything but focus on the bottom line.
You know, and you know, trying to influence politicians and undermine laws and regulations to try to get their way, to do things cheaper, even if it's poisoning the water and all this kind of stuff. And so in some circles, I feel like money kind of is getting like a bad name, that like money's a bad thing, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but there does feel like there's this tension because it's also being celebrated, like the fact that Trump's in power.
Right.
You know, the fact that people see him as a successful businessman,
Right.
you know, just because he's a very extravagant, what's the word? Like very obvious with his wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or who was it? I saw a quote the other day. I think it was Barack Obama actually, who said something about, like, ask any successful businessman, they wouldn't, in America, they wouldn't say that Trump is a successful businessman. Like, he's like a cartoon successful businessman.
Sure.
But but
All
a lot
facade.
a lot of people see him as this kind of American ideal of success.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, for a long time we have idealized material wealth. That it's so weird that we grow up with this saying that money can't buy happiness.
Yeah.
But all the advertisements and, you know, the top attainment of life for many people, or at least as it's advertised to us, is, you know, the boats and the cars and the women and the watches and the nice place and
the clothes
and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, to me it was always obvious that that doesn't really make you happy, because look at the people who have that and listen to what they say. Are they necessarily happier? No. But there still is that idealization of material wealth and that people really strive for. They're motivated by it, you know. It's like the carrot at the end of the stick that makes you run faster.
Well, I wonder if it's because there's not an alternative.
Or that they don't know about it.
Yeah. Exactly. Not that there isn't, but what's the other option? You know, they don't necessarily have the meaning that.
Yeah, like if not that, then what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If not, you know, a nice car, nice house, nice holidays, then what?
Yeah, I don't think people know a lot, you know. I feel like in a previous era in America, there was more community and neighborhoods were closer. There still are places like this, but a lot of people don't know their neighbors anymore, or you know the people at the end of the street. People aren't as close to their families. I feel like people feel less connected to each other.
Yeah.
To me, that's something I derive a lot of meaning from in life, is my relationships, and, you know, investing that time in getting to know somebody and doing things together and sharing experiences. And of course there's like personal wellness stuff too, right? Just taking good care of yourself and getting good rest and meditating or those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's connection to others and it's connection to self. I think a lot of people don't feel, and maybe a lot of people wouldn't know what I mean by that, but a lot of people don't feel connected to themselves.
Right.
And so they're looking for things outside of themselves to feel connected.
Or they feel empty inside and they're trying to fill it from the external world.
Yeah.
Or they don't love themselves, they're trying to get somebody else to love them.
Yeah. It's deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an issue all over the world, I think. Have you heard of Bruce Parry?
No.
He is a British TV presenter, I guess. He's a I don't know what you'd call him, adventure, no.
What does he do?
He was ex-British Navy and did all these kind of, I'm losing my words, like trips to crazy places and jungle expeditions.
Is he kind of like a Bear Grylls type of guy?
Not quite, but yeah, you're on the right track. But he basically did this program in the UK called Tribe, and I loved it. And this was probably about 10 years ago, and he lived with all these different tribes around the world, and it was all about seeking, you know, what their lives were like. And it was very different to your kind of average, that kind of program, because he just had this charm and this way of, he lived with them, he did everything they did, he really connected with them. And he's just released this new film called Tawai, and it's all about one of the tribes he stayed in called the Penan tribe, which is from Borneo. And he basically went back to them because they were the only tribe where, like in all the other tribes, they were still affected by the things we're affected by in the Western world, like hierarchy and a disconnection from nature and just different challenges. Whereas this tribe, they've got this deep connection with nature, and that's what their word Tawai means, is their feeling of being connected to nature. And because the way they live, there's no hierarchy, there's no need to kind of impress people within the tribe or like buy things for to show who they are and their identity. They've just got less trauma than we have in our lives, but less stress, like hardly any stress. And he's filmed a whole film about them because, you know, he's just really interested in what can we learn from them in the way we live, in terms of our connection to nature and our connection to material things. And I haven't seen the film because it's only in the UK, showing in the UK, but it sounds amazing. And it's all about this very topic of connection and disconnection and what that's doing to people in the world. And
I feel like it's a growing challenge in the modern world to stay connected to nature, you know, especially being someplace like Hong Kong, which is just, it's certainly different than the forest. I don't know if you would call it unnatural. I've heard this perspective that like this person didn't like dividing between the natural world and the human world. That like the human world is the natural world. Like we came from this earth and we're, you know, just like would you look at a termite hill and say that's unnatural? This like giant structure
what
that they built, right? This is what we build. And we have the ability to create new things out of nature, you know. But you know, I'm going to Singapore. Have you been there?
Yeah.
Been to Singapore? I'm really interested to see that city. I think of that city as also a city of the future because they have these skyscrapers, very modern, very efficient buildings, but they also incorporate gardens into them. And there's like all these plants hanging and these giant, I don't know what they are, like metal sculptures that vines are growing up. And one day they're gonna look like these giant trees, just tree sculptures in the city. It's a beautiful looking city. Also, you know, an economic powerhouse, and they've really kind of like embraced and refined the capitalist model into a way that actually works better, from what I understand, which is not very much yet. I want to learn more about it, but you know, I think there's a way to incorporate that natural aesthetic and the energy and charge and feeling of well-being that we get in nature in the natural environment. I think there's a way to soften the edges of our buildings and incorporate more plant life and into them too.
I agree.
Like I think of like Star Trek and stuff like that, all the buildings in science fiction that look futuristic. I'm like, that looks like a beautiful city. Like, why don't we start making things like that? That's pretty cool.
Well, they're doing that in China as well. So a lot of the new buildings that they're building in, like, you know, cities of 20 million people that we've never even heard of, they're building amazing kind of, I guess you'd call them eco-friendly. I don't know how eco-friendly they are, but aesthetically eco-friendly, like with greenery on the outside and more efficient in terms of the energy they use. And so China is definitely and really futuristic as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they're building some really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Singapore is definitely more accessible, and it's there. You can see it. You can see what they're trying to do, and that's what I love about Singapore. When you get off the airplane, I mean, when you come out of the airport and you're coming from the airport into the city, so in the cab, like the road that goes into the city is just trees and pink flowers, and it's so nice. You can feel the difference as soon as you even the airport, actually, the airport is amazing. And there's like, they've got a butterfly garden and koi carp ponds and all sorts of very natural kind of aesthetics and things. It's you feel it as soon as you land. It's amazing.
And Hong Kong has some of that too. Like, you took me to Hong Kong Park, where there's koi ponds and gardens, and there's a big aviary there. And it doesn't feel like you're in one of the most densely populated cities in the world when you're in there. I mean, you can see all the skyscrapers around still, but you're like kind of in amongst the trees and things like that.
Again, I think, I don't know, is it an Asian thing? Like, Asia does, it is quite good for spaces for contemplation, and I think there's a lot of superstition around things like koi carp and water and having that near
Feng
your
shui.
Buildings. Exactly. Or near your buildings or in your buildings, or so that maintains that those beliefs maintain at oneness with nature. I think that in the Western cities we've forgotten.
And there's a similar thing in Japan too. I went to this temple, I think it was in Tokyo, might have been another city, but you get off the subway and you walk through the red gate, which is called a tori. It's like a Japanese temple gate. You walk through there, and you're just walking down this path, and before you know it, you're in the forest, and you're like right in the middle of Tokyo or whatever city it was. And there's this long walk through the forest, and you get to this beautiful temple that's there. And so the old Japanese religion is called Shinto, which is, I guess you'd say, an animistic, it's not really a religion, it's like a spirituality or philosophy, somewhat shamanic. And they believe that everything is alive, or everything has an energy, that the trees have spirits, the rocks have spirits. And so this Shinto temple, they believe that, it's a shrine or a place of worship to appreciate the nature spirits. And so they keep all the nature around it, because that's kind of like where it gets its power, and it is a powerful place. When you're there, you can feel that. And so they believe that if you cut down those trees, the spirits won't have a place to live, and the temple will be meaningless, right? So you just have this giant forest in the middle of Tokyo that just won't be touched, because their very belief system protects it.
Amazing. There's definitely an energetic quality to those sort of places in Asia, Japan and Taiwan, and even here, because I mean, a lot of those places do have Buddhist sanctuaries and monasteries and things like that attached to them, but so it's definitely got an energetic quality that a lot of cities don't have.
I was thinking, as I was in Taiwan, about all of my trips that I've done, and I realized that this is my 4th time in Asia, and that I've pretty much only traveled to Asia, and I never really thought about that. Like, I've always been open to the entire world anytime I'm traveling. Like, where do I want to most go? And I just keep ending up back over here.
In Asia.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
It's hard to say, really. Like I said, I didn't really realize that until this trip. But I feel more at home here in a way. Like, I feel that there's less judgment of me. Like, there's that competitive pressure in Western society, right? And for each of us as individuals to succeed, sometimes to succeed over another person.
Yes.
And there's a constant weighing out of, like, where do I stand amongst other people?
Yeah.
And like an insecurity sometimes over one's own standing. You know, am I good enough to be king of the hill or queen of the hill?
Yeah.
Do I have what it takes?
Are you successful in the society's eyes?
Yeah. Am I successful now? And do I have the ability to become successful in the way that I want, to fulfill my dream, to receive the praise and adoration of my peers and family? There's like a lot of that kind of pressure. And I think it causes people to, it promotes jealousy and envy, and causes people to judge others or try and knock people down a peg.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel that. I just don't feel the pressure of other people's minds upon me when I'm in Asia. Like, people just leave you alone. Like, I mean, and I'm different. I'm white skinned. I wear different clothes. I'm a traveler. People are curious about me. When I walk around, people notice me. They'll look at me longer than they might look at another Hong Kong person. But I feel like, they're just curious about me, and they're not really judging me.
Yeah, I definitely feel that too. I do think part of that is not being in the country that you grew up in. I think that if you staying in the country you grew up in, there are all these societal and family and friend, expectations of you to live a certain way or succeed in a certain way. And I think as soon as you leave your country of origin and live somewhere else, that changes. Because you've already made the conscious decision to live a different life by not choosing the kind of track that is expected of you in your home country. So I think part of that, for me anyway, that it comes from that. So the expectations of you are different because you're different. You've chosen a different life.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gradually liberated myself from other people's expectations, kind of just like shed them or
being
set
here
that boundary back in my home country, back in the States.
It's hard to do.
But there's that other step of shedding my own expectations of myself, my internal expectations to meet certain ways. And it is easier to do that when you go someplace that's completely different, that doesn't hold those values over your head. And it's like I always feel more liberated when I travel. Like, oh, whoa, now I'm just here and I could do whatever I want. Like, what do I actually want to do? Contrasted with what do I feel obligated to do?
Yeah, definitely agree. Yeah, you just like the things that make you, your identity changes when you're in another country compared to when you're at home. When you're at your home country, what you're wearing, what job you do, what house you have, what you choose to do on the week, all these things kind of make you up your identity. And here that kind of falls away a little bit, or when you choose to live somewhere else, that falls away, which is like just a breath of fresh air. And then you realize that all the stuff that you thought that mattered in your home country, actually, well, some of it matters, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't hold the same kind of weight and pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I was reading something about this topic ages ago, and I think it was an American woman, and she was saying how she'd moved to somewhere in South America, I can't remember which country, and like Uruguay or something like that, and she opened up a pancake shop cooking and selling pancakes, and she just lived this really simple, happy life just with this little pancake shop, and she said that wherever, I can't remember where she was from, the States I think, she said if she had done that back home, it would have been seen as like, you run a pancake shop, you know, it would have been kind of looked down on a little bit, her life and how she lived her life. But where in Uruguay or wherever it was that none of that societal judgment was there. She was just building a life for herself that meant that she was healthy and she could live comfortably and happily, and yeah, it was completely different. So if you're fortunate, I think, to leave your home country for reasons other than reasons of curiosity and financial improvement, then you do shake off the pressures that you have in your home country.
Yeah, and there's so much opportunity as well out in the rest of the world too, and I just want to bring that up and kind of stress that, like, I'm starting to see it, but there's so many entrepreneurs out here who, you know, it's like maybe that would be silly to open a pancake shop at home, but in Uruguay, have they ever had pancakes like this? Maybe, you know, to bring culture or to bring skills to an area. The world is so big, and yet it's so accessible now more than ever, especially for English speakers. You know, even the ability to speak English is a skill that, you know, can get you a good paying job in an area that needs it. I don't know. Everyone has so many talents that maybe the current place they're in is saturated with that talent. But if you bring it out to another area, you become more unique and more valuable. And it does take courage to go out and even explore that option, much less like really go for it. But, you know, people can improve their lives if they're willing to do that. Yeah.
And, you know, just to say, I think that we are also very lucky because we have the privilege of coming from a wealthy country where, you know, and of having a passport that allows us to kind of just go, oh, I'm going to go and, you know, I've got this opportunity, I'm going to go and live in Asia, or, you know, not many people either are moving countries out of choice or have that fortune that they can make that choice for themselves.
Totally.
So
we are very lucky.
We are.
Yeah. Yeah, we have we come from stable countries that, you know, other places want us, or we have good relations. We have strong currencies.
Yeah.
The American dollar, the British pound, you know. The Hong Kong dollar is also quite strong currency, so my money doesn't go as far here, but other places like Taiwan, or I'm going to Thailand next. I mean, it's amazing that, you know, what kind of amazing meals I can get for $3 to $5 and really everything costs about 20% of what I'm used to it costing. And that's a huge privilege for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, shall we close this up? We've had about a 2-hour conversation.
Has it been 2 hours?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's amazing.
I reckon we could probably keep going as well.
We probably could.
I think we'd bore everybody on the listening in. And we're also sitting in a room with no aircon on.
Yeah, it's getting quite warm.
I'm getting quite rosy in the cheeks.
Yeah. Well, we covered a lot of stuff.
We did.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much.
My first podcast.
Oh, good. It's about my 5th, so I'm barely ahead of you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Well, have a have a beautiful time in Hong Kong. It's good to know that you're here.
Yeah.
I probably will come through again at some point.
I hope so.
And Kelly just told me today that she's moving back to Hong Kong this year.
I know. She sent me a message too.
That's cool.
Yay. The Americans are coming to Hong Kong.
We're coming to Asia.
Awesome. Thank you.
Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel. You can find the link in the description. Many episodes have a video component, though not all. And if you've been looking at it in the last couple weeks and haven't seen much, that's because I've been struggling with my video editing software, trying to get it all together. It's been more difficult than expected. But most of the episodes are up now, and the rest will be up soon. You can find this episode on YouTube, although it doesn't have a video component. So check that out. Next week, we're going to Thailand, where I speak with a mysterious man who goes by the name of Nanashi. Nanashi is Japanese for no name, although this man is not Japanese. He's an American who has been living in Thailand for the last 15 years. He's an ethnobotanist, and he grows his own medicinal psychedelic plants, including ayahuasca, chacruna, peyote, San Pedro, and many others that most of us have never heard of. He mentions a particular plant which is very high in DMT, and one that he thinks is higher in DMT than any other plant discovered. So join us for that. He's a very interesting fellow. And don't forget that you can engage with me on social media. Check me out on Facebook, Chronicles of a Psychonaut. You can also find me on Twitter at FinchCanFly. And on Instagram, I'm at Chronicles of a Psychonaut. And I'm just finishing up my Taiwan travel posts, and I'm beginning to post my Hong Kong travel pictures this week. So check me out there. Thanks, guys.